up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty. Oh yeah, yeah.
Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. Cause they're the ones who's coming up and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. Oh yeah,
The world won't get no better if we just let it be.
oh no.
The world won't get no better. We gotta change again, just you and me.
Hello and welcome everyone to today's installment of Leading with Justice, our speaker series presented by the California State University, Sacramento Doctorate in Educational Leadership Program. Real quick as we get started, if you have a favorite quote or idea of the day, we'd love it if you would share it with us on social media. You can tag us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Instagram. And if you want to use the hashtag Leading with Justice, we'd appreciate it. Some quick housekeeping. We are recording the webinar. Audience cameras and mics aren't going to be on or recorded at all. We have ASL interpreters and closed captions provided today. If you'd like to turn on the closed captions, there is a CC button on the screen. And we have two ways to connect. If you'd like to share your thoughts, connect with the audience, etc., if you can add that to the chat. If you have any technical questions, go ahead and add them there. And then for Dr. Noguera's talk today, if you can put any questions about that in the Q&A section, and we're going to have a specific time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. As we get started today, we'd love to hear a little bit about you. If you could add your name, location, maybe your job title or organization, just so that we can see where everybody's coming from. And with that, I would like to introduce EDD faculty member, Dr. Elizabeth Morgan.
Thank you so much. So good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Holliday Morgan, and I am one of the new assistant professors in the Doctorate of Educational Leadership in the College of Education at Sac State. So on behalf of our director, Dr. Vaja Watson, our associate director, Dr. Lisa Romero, our dean, and the rest of the College of Education faculty and staff, we would like to welcome you and thank you for spending your lunch hour with us. I want to thank our sponsors and partners that really make this series happen, which include the Sac State School of Education, College of Education, SMUD, the Sacramento Kings, Fresno State's EDD program, and last but not least, the Sacramento Area Youth Speaks Says program, which is a local literary arts movement that supports students as they are authors of their own lives and as change agents. So the Leading with Justice series is a way that we come together to pull together and join forces to move forward. As our director, Dr. Watson, would say, we want to really emphasize that this is not called leading toward justice. This is because that would denote that our goal is justice. But really, this is about us leading with justice that focuses more on our embodied practices, experiences, and interactions with one another and with the world around us. So the question remains, how do we lead with justice? So to help us come to that understanding, we have a a way to get answers. And the way that we're going to do that is to be able to pull upon the expertise of people like Dr. Pedro Antonio Noguera, who will engage with us to not only give us food for thought, but food for action. But before we do that, we have a special surprise for Dr. Noguera, and that we have a guest poet that is here that will give us a special selection for us today. So I'm going to welcome to the stage Ashe Noguera Arunga, Dr. Noguera's granddaughter, as our poet today. Ashe was born in Seattle, Washington, but grew up in California. She is a 13-year-old artist, speaker, entrepreneur, extraordinaire, and she will be performing for us as she is an international and all-around creatively known artist. Ashe's mission is to learn more about her history and her culture, and she is committed to learning new things and spreading knowledge to inspire people around the world through her art. So with that, I'm going to give it up and give the stage to Ashe.
I am blessed with family. I am blessed with life. My ancestors protect me. They help save my life. They help save my family. They make the world a better place. My ancestors live with me. I see them in my face when I look in the mirror between time and space. I help my ancestors and they help me. They teach me to be proud. They teach me to be free. I'm an Afro-Latina, Black girl, magic in the flesh. I want to travel the world and always do my best. I want to tell Black girls across the world to believe in themselves, no matter what the test. We are healthy, we are strong, we stand tall, we live long. Black and brown girls, we are free. Get in formation and stand with me. Let our ancestors lead us to one another. Let our hearts and minds join us together. I help my ancestors and they help me. They teach us to be proud. They teach us to be free.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ashe, for that beautiful poem. And I now have the honor to introduce our speaker for the hour, who has been an inspiration to many and a mentor to many, including myself. I'm sure he doesn't know this, but if it wasn't for some advice that he gave me back in 2002, while I was completing my master's program at Harvard, I know that I wouldn't be here today. So I just want to thank Dr. Noguera for all of his hard work. So in addition to being a phenomenal teacher, researcher, and scholar, Dr. Noguera is a Emory Stoops and Joyce King Stoops Dean of the Rocher School of Education and Distinguished Professor in Education at the University of Southern California. Prior to joining USC, Dr. Noguera served as a Distinguished Professor of Education at the Graduate School of Education and Information Studies at the University of California, Los Angeles. And before joining UCLA, he served as a tenured professor and holder of endowed chairs at New York University, Harvard University, and University of California, Berkeley. He is an author of 15 books. His most recent books entitled A Search for Common Ground, Conversations About the Toughest Questions in K-12 Education, and another book entitled City Schools and the American Dream. So will you please join me in giving a huge virtual welcome to Dr. Noguera right after this musical selection.
One love, one heart, let's get together and feel alright. Hear the children crying, one love. Hear the children crying, one heart. Saying give thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Saying let's get together and feel alright.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm introduction. It's such a privilege to be here. I can't say how happy it made me to see my granddaughter, Ashe, doing the poem. I have her picture on my computer, so she's with me all the time, and it just meant so much for me to see her. And then I got a cameo from my other granddaughter, Imani, and my daughter, Maya. So my heart is full of love and joy. So it's great to be with you. I want to thank my good friend, Vajra Watson, who I've known since she was in middle school. She's such an inspiring leader, and I appreciate this invitation. I want to thank Dr. Morgan, who I haven't seen for so many years, and just so happy to see you doing this great work. And it's such an honor to be part of this series. I would suggest you even think about changing the title for Leading for Justice, because we have so much work to do to ensure that there's justice in this country right now, particularly in education. So let me get started. I'm going to share my screen, and I'll try to be conscious of the time so I leave enough time for questions. And I already told the ASL interpreter, my mother's hard of hearing, so I'm sensitive to the fact that there are people out there who, in the deaf community. I'm happy you're with us, and if I speak too fast, please let me know. So I want to start by talking about why the pursuit of equity in education is an imperative at this time. I just got off the call with a reporter who wanted to talk about the recent NAEP scores. The NAEP scores are also called America's Report Card. It's the National Assessment of Educational Progress. That's what it stands for. And sadly, the scores are based on academic performance of kids before the pandemic. So we can't blame the pandemic for the fact that scores for kids of all kinds across America have gone down, and gaps in achievement have widened. And the reporter asked me for my opinions on why I thought this was happening. And what I said is that although we have tried, we've acknowledged the failure of No Child Left Behind, we have tried to move schools away from the fixation with test scores and preparing kids for tests, that really hasn't happened. And we haven't really focused nearly enough on how to get kids excited about learning. One of the findings in the article that you'll see is that kids are not reading much out of school. Why? I'd say because in school, we're not developing that love of reading. Outside of school, they're spending more time on their phones and on video games. And sadly, my father, who did not graduate from high school, used to tell us, you can get a free education with a library card. And he practiced it. That's still true. Imagine what would happen right now if all kids were avid readers. Imagine how different this country would be. People would be able to distinguish between real news and fake news. They wouldn't buy the myths out there about vaccines. They would understand the research behind it and the science behind it. They would understand that climate change is real and the threats to our future and future generations are real. Education is in trouble. And it's not just because of the NAEP scores. It's because we've been going down the wrong path for too long. So I want to spend my time with you today talking about how to change that. So let me start by just framing it. This is about the growing threat of inequality to not just this country, but to the world. Inequality in wealth has been exacerbated by the pandemic. Look at the front page article in the New York Times today. It says the world economy cools. The global divide between the rich and poor is growing. Jeff Bezos became a trillionaire during the pandemic. The rich have gotten richer. The poor are getting poorer. And that's true not just in the world, it's true in the United States. a growing number of people in this country are living below the poverty line. They're threatened with evictions. They can't pay their bills. And the stress and uncertainty poses a threat to our future, as much of a threat as climate change. As we can see, the crisis is worsening and it has racial implications. So we should not be surprised when we see that gaps in achievement, the so-called achievement gap, has not budged. In fact, it's gotten worse. Because inequality, the achievement gap has to be seen as nothing more than an educational manifestation of inequality. We've known for the longest time the strongest predictor for how well kids will do in school is family income. When you combine family income with parent education, that is how much education the parents had, you can predict with great consistency how well kids will do in school. That's why the children of the rich continue to do better. The children of the affluent, the well-educated, do better than the children of the poor. That's true not just in terms of race, it's true for white people too. That's why we've got to embrace equity as a goal in education, because education is one of the few resources in this country we have for counting inequality. Equity is about giving kids what they need to be successful and acknowledging that goes beyond academic support. It includes social and economic needs. It also includes their emotional and psychological well-being. Hungry kids don't do well in school. Depressed kids don't do well in school. Kids who have unstable housing don't do well. Now, schools can't solve those problems on their own. But when we're attentive to the needs of our kids, when we know our kids, we're in a better position to respond humanely to their needs. And that's got to be at the core. A sense of humanity, a sense that we deeply care about the children we serve. It's also about being focused on the outcomes. Because if you care, but there's no evidence that the kids are learning, then it's a waste of time, because parents need more than that. They need real evidence that kids are learning. And the kids need more than that. They need to be really prepared through their education to take care of themselves, to support their families, to build their communities. So how do we do that work? Well, many of you have seen this diagram. It helps us to understand that equity and equality are not the same. Treating everybody the same ensures that those who have the least will stay furthest behind. So equity is about scaffolding to ensure inclusion. We're doing that today with sign language. What we often don't see is this, that those with privilege always get more. They start out ahead. That's why they're in the gifted classes, the honors classes, the AP classes. We know we're succeeding in education when the backgrounds of our kids don't predict how well they do in school. Well, how do we get there? Well, we got to do this. We have got to eliminate the barriers that prevent kids from learning. That's what equity work is about. I got these last two diagrams from a colleague in New Zealand who's been doing this work with Maori children in Auckland for years, and Milne, and creating a school that is focused on the language and culture of Maori children. Because of that, those kids are thriving, because they not only have they eliminated the barriers, they've created a nurturing environment that lets all kids have a chance to use education to improve their lives. So what are the barriers? The most common barriers are complacency. We just get used to the patterns and we rationalize them. We blame the parents. We blame poverty. We blame the school board. We blame politics. And let me be clear, Not to say that those may not be real factors, but whenever we're focused on blame, it means we're not focused on what we can do. What can we do now in our schools to create the conditions where kids feel respected, feel cared for, feel challenged, feel stimulated? That's the work we've got to do. We've also got to address the fact that many of our teachers and principals don't have the professional skills. And I say this as the dean of an elite school of education. I know, even at our best, we're producing novice teachers. Novice teachers, too often, you know what we do to them? We assign them the most challenging kids to teach. Why? Because we're saving the most skilled teachers for the most privileged kids. We reinforce inequity. What we got to do instead is build the capacity of our teachers, which means they've got to know content. You know how many teachers who are teaching elementary school know very little math, know less, almost, they know only a little bit more math than the kids they teach. They need content knowledge. They need pedagogical skill, because now kids learn the same ways. And they need to know how to build strong relationships rooted in trust with kids. That means that professional development's got to be differentiated to support teachers, just as we expect teachers to differentiate support for kids. We've got to make sure that schools have resources to mitigate the effects of poverty. Kids need to be fed. They need to have a coat in the winter. They need to have AC, especially in Sacramento, because it's so hot there in the summer. They need resources so that our schools have the capacity to meet the needs of our kids. We've got to address bias. Kids know if you don't like them. Kids know if you're afraid of them. Kids know if you don't believe in them. We live at a time where people in some places are not afraid of expressing that bias. But in other places, they try to hide it because they know it's not politically correct. But it still shows up. It shows up in those expectations. And so we've got to be focused on how do we create schools where bias and racism are not obstacles to learning. And then we got to stay focused on the evidence that kids are actually doing it. So equity is not about lowering the standards, not about making excuses, certainly not only an issue for schools serving kids who are poor, because I go to a lot of suburban and affluent schools where the equity issues are not addressed there either. And it's not about choosing which kids to serve. We have to serve all kids, regardless of their backgrounds. So what can schools do? Really important question that every educator and every university at a school of education, especially one like yours, where my good friend Leela Jacobs worked for years in training a generation of educational leaders, has to be committed to. Because if we're not, then we're not going to make a difference. So how do we ensure that we're making a difference? Well, first of all, we got to know that education is a source of power. There's a reason why slave masters made it illegal to teach enslaved African people to read and write, because they understood the power of literacy. They understood that an educated enslaved person was dangerous because they could use education to empower themselves and others. And there was a lot of evidence of this. Even today, we know that education is implicated in a lot of problems like poverty and crime and poor health, but it's also a part of the solution to those problems. Here's one thing we know. If you want to reduce poverty, and the World Bank has found this for years, educate girls, educate women, because the women are the first teachers of our children. Societies that do that find that they can lift themselves out of poverty simply by making sure girls get an education. You want to reduce recidivism? Turn our prisons into schools. Turn them into job training centers. Address mental health needs. Right now, our prisons are producing criminals. There's a reason why there's over 2/3 of the young people who are incarcerated are back within 2 years because they are not provided with an education to break the cycle of incarceration. So education could be powerful if we know how to use it. So we need an equity agenda focused on 5 principles. And this is rooted in research. University of Chicago, the Consortium of School Improvement, has studied school reform for years. Question they ask is, many schools have been reformed, which schools got better? Read the book, Organizing Schools for Improvement by Anthony Brike and his colleagues. They identify what we call now the 5 essentials. This is what should be guiding educational policy today. First, they've got to have a coherent instructional guidance system. Coherence means teachers are clear about what they're teaching, but what's really important, what kids should learn so they'll be ready for the next grade, what to do when they don't learn it, how to intervene, how to support kids. You only get coherence if teachers are planning together, working together, sharing lessons. You don't get coherence when everybody's doing their own thing in their classroom. Second, ongoing development of the professional capacity of the staff. Ongoing because you don't become a master teacher in a year or 2. And we need master teachers. It takes time. It takes reflection. It takes support. Third, strong parent-community ties. Because parents have to reinforce the learning at home. And when that happens, achievement improves. Look at Vajra's kids. If Vajra's on there, her kids are excelling. She has a son admitted to Berkeley and Harvard. He's at Berkeley now. He's a superstar. Why? Because of what his mom and dad did to reinforce learning at home. And we have lots of examples around the country of that. When parents are involved, it makes a difference. Too many schools treat parents as an afterthought. Don't build that partnership rooted in trust and respect. Fourth, a student-centered learning climate, a culture that affirms the value of children, that lets them know they're respected and cared for, so the kids know this is a safe place. It's cool to be smart here. Their dreams are nurtured. They feel supported. And fifth, leadership, shared leadership. You need principals that have vision and commitment, but they have to share that vision with the staff so that every member of the staff, the custodian, the secretary, all the teachers understand their role, work together. You know who knows that? Kadir Rajgopal. Kadir teaches up there, is a principal of an elementary school up there in Sacramento. Go visit his school. You know what he did when he was at Grant High School? They assigned him to work with 9th grade. First thing he did is he took the custodians out to lunch. They said, "You're taking us out to lunch?" He said, "Yeah." And then he asked them, you know what he asked them? He said, "What are your dreams?" They said, "What are our dreams?" He said, "No one's taking us out to lunch, and certainly no one's ever asked us what our dreams are." So why are you asking us that? He said, "Because I want to know what you really care about, because I want you on my team. Your job is not just to clean the school. Your job is to make it beautiful so kids feel good about being here." Wow. Think about that. So think about these 5 and ask yourself, does this make sense? Is this what we should be focused on? Because equity can't just be a slogan. No Child Behind was a good slogan, except we left too many kids behind. So how do we ensure that we're doing the right work? Well, here's a school that was doing that work, Brockton High School. Brockton High School was and is the largest school in the state of Massachusetts, with over 4,200 kids. In 1998, it was described by the Boston Globe as a cesspool. They said they were the worst school in the state. And the projection was that when state exams were given, 75% of the kids would fail. So a group of teachers, veteran teachers, went to the principal. They were so offended by the article. so worried about this. They said, listen, the only way our kids will be prepared for this exam, and in Massachusetts, if you don't pass the exam, they give you 3 chances. If you don't pass on the 3rd time, no diploma. Said the only way our kids will pass is if every teacher becomes a teacher of literacy, regardless of the subject they teach. Because the kids are coming in with low literacy. And if you don't have if you can't read and write at grade level, you can't do the math or the science or the social studies, because they're all literacy based. And the principal, Sue Satchowitz, my friend and colleague, said, I'd like to do this, but I can't make the teachers do it. I said, you don't have to make them. Let's start with those who are willing, and we'll build from there. She said, but I can't pay you. I said, you don't have to pay us. We'll work on our own time. Teachers teaching teachers. And that's what they did. They focused on literacy. And at first, not everybody was on board. You had art teachers said, definitely, I'm not doing that. PE teachers said, I do PE. A lot of people said, I don't do this, but some bought it. By 2002, there was enough buy-in that 50% of the kids passed the exams. They said, literacy works. Let's stick with it. More teachers got on board. By 2006, 80% of the kids were passing. By 2010, 90% of the kids at Brockton High passed the state exam. 1/3 of the senior class got the highest possible score. That means they get a free scholarship to any public university in the state. These kids in this picture are the scholarship winners. And you know what? The winners match the background of the school, because Brockton is a poor community, mostly immigrant, Black, Latino, Cape Verdean, Latin American. Brockton is known for fighting. That's what it's known for. Rocky Marciano came from Brockton. Marvin Hagler, the middleweight champ, came from Brockton. There's a boxer out front. And guess what? They still fight at Brockton. Kids get into fights. And that too is an opportunity for literacy. First thing they have to do when they get called in is write about it. Write about what happened. Because they're going to use every opportunity to reinforce learning. Now, the sad thing about Brockton is they didn't stick with it. Got a new superintendent who didn't understand the key to success, and they made cuts. But guess what? They brought Sue Satchowitz back this year, the former principal. They brought her out of retirement, and Sue came in to lead the work again, because they understood. You can't sit around and blame the community. They couldn't sit around and blame the middle schools and say, you know, you're not preparing the kids. They met the kids where they were. Read about it in our book, Excellence Through Equity. Here's a school right here in LA that I love, Social Justice Humanitas High School. All the kids, low income, 100% Latino. Most of the kids don't speak English at home. Many of them undocumented. It's in a community surrounded by gangs. They haven't had a fight in over 7 years. They have the 4th highest graduation rate in all of LA. I visited the school several times. I said, what's the key to make the school work? And walk the halls with the principals. First of all, we make sure the kids are safe here. I said, how do you keep it safe? He says, by getting to know them. 3 days before school starts, they're bringing the 9th graders in to get to know them. They do activities so they get to know each other. All kids come in a day before school starts to work on social relationships. I said, how do you get the kids to come in? He said, we just tell them they have to come, they come. They work on building a culture of inclusion, a culture of excellence, and they have a sense of mutual accountability. They're the only high school in LA where the kids evaluate the teachers. I asked the teachers, what's it like to work here? Because they have very little attrition. Teachers want to be there. I said, it's great. Teachers plan together, we work together, they do a lot of interdisciplinary planning. I said, what's the hardest thing about working here? He said, the feedback from the kids, because they don't hold back. They tell us what they really think about teaching. I was so impressed that I asked to meet with a group of kids. And we met in the library, And I asked them to tell me about the school, things they like, because, you know, they were so proud of the large number of kids that were sending off to colleges. I said, how often are you inspired by what you learned? Several could shout up their hand and said, we're inspired every day. I said, I don't believe you. What did you learn yesterday? Girl raised her hand. She said, yesterday, I learned about the forced sterilization of women that was occurring in this country through eugenics. I was so disturbed, I went home and told my parents about it. And we went on the computer to understand why it happened, where it happened, who was behind it. You know what happens when kids get a good education? They want more education. That's how you build kids who become real scholars, who take control of their lives. They're doing it, Social Justice Humanitas. Come visit. This is a school in Philly where they're bringing computer science to the kids. These are a group of girls in a computer science club because they want to make sure these kids are being prepared for jobs that are going to pay well. It's vocational, but it's not wood shop. It's not learning how to make beds. This is about learning something that will enable them to have careers that will pay well so they can support themselves and their families. We make it seem too hard, but it's not that hard. We have to cultivate the agency in our kids. We have to empower them, which means teachers have to be empowered to understand that when kids have the skills to engage in problem solving, to study their communities. I just tweeted an article about that today. If you use Twitter, follow me on Twitter. I share information there. We have to foster access to deeper learning so they can use those higher order skills to get to critical thinking and problem solving and creativity. We have to build social capital, get our communities involved, build trust with the families we serve. When we do these things, we can change outcomes. All of this is coming together at this middle school. Look at this middle school classroom at Hollenbeck Middle School in Los Angeles. These kids are in an 8th grade algebra class and they're up out of their seats talking while they learn the math. Why? Because that's developmentally appropriate when you're in middle school. What do middle schoolers like to do? Ask Ashe. They like to talk. They like to move. But they're talking about math. You know what they were working on? They were given the dimensions of a house and they had to figure out how to order materials. How much drywall? How many bricks? How much carpeting? They had to apply the mathematical principles they learned for construction of a house. And guess what? A lot of them come from families that are involved in construction. This is East LA, again, predominantly Latino, predominantly low income. And these kids are doing algebra. Algebra is the gateway course to college. And the teacher's so good, she can stand in the back and talk to me. Why? Because she's prepared them to learn this way, which allows her to move among them and differentiate support. This is the highest form of classroom management. Why? Because the kids are engaged, and engagement is the key to higher achievement. When kids are engaged, and engagement is behavioral, that means they're on task, they're prepared, but it's also cognitive. They understand what they're doing, they're making connections. And it's emotional. They care about it. They're motivated. They don't just settle for getting it done, they try to do it their best. When we get kids engaged, we see achievement improve. Who are your teachers that know how to do this? How can you expose them to the teachers that don't? Because not every teacher can do this. A lot of teachers look at a picture like that, it scares them. Scares them because the kids are in control. That's what we need. How many of you know kids that like to argue? How many of them have learned how to argue with facts? How to do research? how to listen so they can rebut. Debate can be a great way to develop those skills in kids. So let's not make this harder than it seems. We have tools, we have resources we can use to create equitable schools that help us in countering the deep inequities in our society. So it starts by changing the questions we're asking. Instead of asking, how do we raise achievement? We should be asking, how do we get kids excited about learning? I was just asked to be on a statewide task force by the state superintendent, Tony Thurmond, on Black student achievement, because Black student achievement across California is in the gutter. Why? Because we're focused on the wrong things. We're not focused on getting kids to feel safe and motivated in school, to feel excited about learning and appreciated. We're boring those kids to death. We've been asking how to hold teachers accountable. No, we should be holding everyone accountable. Governors, presidents, superintendents, school board members, and yes, teachers and parents and kids themselves. Everybody's got to be accountable for what they do. That's when it makes a difference. Read Michael Fullan's book, Coherence, and he describes Toronto's journey. Toronto is the highest performing urban school district in North America. Toronto is diverse. Racially, linguistically, it's got poverty. They haven't solved poverty in Canada, although they do a lot better than we do. But Toronto schools are world class. Why? Because they build capacity. Capacity in the teachers. If a school's in trouble, they don't threaten to fire people, they go and ask, how can we help? A different approach than we use in America. So instead of asking, how do we close the achievement gap? We should be asking, how do we close the opportunity gaps? How do we provide enriched learning opportunities to kids? How do we create schools where a child's background doesn't predict how well they will do? Let me tell a quick story. I was asked to visit a school. In fact, my good friend Vajra Watson took me there in your region. I won't name the school because I don't want to embarrass the educators. But the principal told me, we've tried everything and our school is still failing. And the district is threatening to take us over. And he said, we don't know what to do. And I'm from this community. I went to this school myself. And he took me around to see classes, and I saw, listless teachers, and it was depressing until they took me to see a poet. That poet was one of the people working with Vajra at SES. And she started class by this. She said, she had about 25 kids in the class. She was a community educator, not a regular teacher. She said, I'm not who you think I am. You think I'm a professional that's in here to teach you something. In fact, I'm struggling to pay my bills. I'm responsible for my mother. I got a sick brother at home. I'm barely making it. I'm here today, but there's more to me than what you see. She said, I bet you that's true for you too. Tell me something about yourself that we don't know that's important to knowing who you are. And with that, the kids took off writing. And they were writing and writing and writing pages. I was shocked at how engaged they were. And after about 25 minutes, they stopped. She said, okay, who's ready to share? And several kids shot up their hand. The first girl who got up stood up and said, I am not cancer. She had just been diagnosed. She said she's not going to let the cancer define her or limit her. Another kid got up. I thought he was joking at first because he was kind of laughing. And then he told a story about being kicked out of his home by his mother and having to walk with his little brother at nighttime in their pajamas to their grandmother's house. And he said, I'm not going to allow this to define me and limit me. And kids kept sharing stories like this. And what struck me is many of the kids didn't know each other, but they were sharing stories about trauma. And you know what we know about trauma? This is a first-tier response, creating a warm environment where people can share their experiences. And that was happening with this poet. And then the bell rang. She said, okay, before you leave, I want you to know this. This is just the start, because you don't do your best work on the first start. So next time I come, you bring those essays and we're gonna work on revising them so that you can share them with your peers and your parents. So I turned to the principal, I said, well, here's the solution to your school. He said, what's that? I said, your teachers need to see this poet because they need to know what's possible. They need to know how to get kids engaged, how to get kids to work hard. That's what too many educators don't see. So we got to transform our schools. The schools we have to become the schools we need. We have to work to produce innovation within the system. And we produce innovation by identifying who are the adults that know how to connect with kids, that know how to inspire them, that know how to challenge and engage them. Give the others a chance to learn from them. Because when we can do that, we can move towards transformation, transforming relationships, transforming the way we provide and deliver instruction, the way we work with parents. Use those 5 essentials to guide the work, and we can begin to create the schools we need. So I want to thank you for the time today. I want to leave time for questions and just say it's been an honor to be with you. I turn it back to Dr. Morgan.
Wow, thank you so much. Amazing. So now we are going to have time for questions. And so please, if you haven't already done so, take some time to either type into the Q&A or into the chat feature, and we'll make sure to get those questions answered as much as possible. So thank you again, Dr. Nogueira, for just your wisdom and your expertise. And we do have one question that has already come up. So this is a question from one of our attendees that says, there is a steady national attack on school boards right now, and teachers are getting fired for using Ta-Nehisi codes, and bans are being put on teaching about Cesar Chavez. What is your advice for school boards in this moment? And how can we do better to protect education and ethnic studies?
So this is a really important question because these are very difficult issues, and you're absolutely right. The threats are real, the threats are physical, and it's happening everywhere. This is a part of a right-wing assault on education. So the only way you can deal with this is by getting your allies. You have to have allies. Your most likely allies are your students and their parents. When you're in a fight, you got to go into a fight with some backup. There's a story in Texas of a Black principal in a predominantly non-Black school who was fired for, the very issues you're talking about, because he was trying to address diversity issues. And it was the kids who came to his back and said, you can't fire this principal. So allies will make a difference, but I don't want to suggest at all that this is easy. This is a difficult period to be a leader, to be a school board member. It's a reason why they're calling on the Justice Department for protection.
Thank you. So this is actually another question that is somewhat similar, thinking about temporally what's happening. So something you mentioned was the need for cultivating agency and empowerment, and how that really is this parallel process, right? As we're doing that for teachers, we're doing that for students, and there's this building up. And so in this age where we're currently in the pandemic still, but in this age where the full weight of teaching and educating is being put on teachers and parents, what would you say, or how would be your advice for how school systems need to reconfigure themselves in order to really truly support and allow this parallel process to occur?
So, the districts that are ready have to use those 5 essentials I laid out to work with schools. Capacity building, I talked about that in the case of Toronto, is a process, not an event. It doesn't just happen. We learned the wrong things in the No Child Left Behind. We focused on kind of top-down accountability. We thought pressure was a strategy for improvement. Pressure is not a strategy for improvement. You don't get schools to improve because you threaten them into improvement. The Toronto strategy said, no, you do collaborative problem solving. The evidence shows you where there's a problem. If you see evidence that kids can't read, it means teachers can't teach reading. It means you need to send a reading specialist over there to go work with the teachers on improving reading. But you got to do it with trust, not with threats. And if that's the message coming from the leadership, then you're going to get more buy-in because teachers feel respected and feel supported. So you're never going to fire your way out into a better school. That was approach some districts use. They say, okay, we'll just fire the bad teachers. No, well, who can replace them? Where's the supply of great teachers? You think they're sitting at home just waiting for their chance? No, you got to help teachers to get better. That's what, again, Kadir Rajagopal shows us is we can do.
Thank you for all those wonderful examples. So we'll have time for just a few more questions. And so please, if you have any, please type them in the chat. But I guess I'll just ask you to give us a charge. So when it comes to leading with justice or leading for justice, we have educators from all different types of backgrounds, but then also different positions. And so I'd love to hear if you have a charge that you'd like to give us to encourage us to walk in that path.
So, I'll give you the charge that I'm giving my own school. Okay, as I said, I'm a dean of a school of education. Just been in the role for a little over a year. Started during the pandemic. I'm taking time to get to know my faculty, so I understand who they are, what they do. But I'm doing that because I want us now to go and engage this community. LA needs help, right? And we're starting with the schools immediately surrounding USC. Many of you know USC is right in the hood. That's why I call it the University of South Central, right? And but the good news is that there's a partnership between the schools surrounding our university and the university. We're going to build on that partnership. We're going to create lab schools. We're going to work with them because universities have resources that we've got to make available to the community. So it should be, and especially for a state university like Sac State, it's great you're doing these webinars. Now, next step is to get out there and be a resource to the Sacramento community, so they know you're their partner in this important work.
Absolutely, awesome. So we have another question that came through from Rosalind, is asking how can we get more diverse teachers? And do you believe that will help?
There's only one way to get more diverse teachers. We got to build a pipeline right from our schools, right? The kids have to become the teachers. And we got to work on cultivating them even while they're in middle and high school, because there are kids, you can see them sometimes. They're interested in helping their peers. They show qualities that you want to see in a teacher. We got, just like, Jeff Andrade Duncan, who many of you know, he said, this is the way we recruit basketball players. Coaches will see a big kid or go watch kids in the playground and say, hey, you need to come out for the team. We need to do that with teachers. And then we need to work on getting those kids into college, preparing them so they'll be able to come out and be our teachers. So we have to start early. I was asked this question when I was in New Mexico. I was doing work there. And they said, the big problem is on our reservations. We don't have, teachers won't stay. We rely on Teach for America. And what should we do? I said, well, Teach for America will never work because those teachers are not committed to the reservation. You have to grow the teachers from the reservation. You have to work to because those kids will stay. They care about their communities and they bring language and culture, which is what we know is key to improving outcomes for Indigenous children. You got to grow the teachers. So that's the work we've got to do, is we got to grow those teachers right from our communities.
Love it. All right, last question we have. So this attendee basically states that they're a part of a team of 3 in the district office and in the English language, English learner department, and they oversee 65 schools, so 3 people. And what would be one powerful action that they can make that you think would help kind of move the needle, help make some change in their work?
So I'm sure that in that district, because it sounds like they're up against great odds, but I'm sure they've got a few teachers in there who are doing excellent work. What I would suggest you do is you take the teachers who are struggling, because a lot of times, again, we put unprepared teachers to work with our English learners, take them to see those classrooms so they can see what those teachers are doing to address the needs of their kids, to get them motivated, get them inspired. You need to see it to believe it. If you've never seen it, it's like if I'm asking you to play an instrument or to play a sport, but you've never seen it and seen it done well, it's very hard to do. That's why football players, after they lose, what do? They watch the film to learn from their mistakes, but they also should watch how it's done properly. That's what we got to do with our teachers. Give them a chance to see it done well, and then debrief with them, unpack it. What are those teachers doing to meet the needs of the kids? How are they planning their lessons? How are they organizing the room? Break it down into its parts.
Love it. Thank you. You've given us so many great pearls of wisdom and just examples. So thank you for that. And I think just the many examples of transformative leadership and transformational leadership has just been so powerful. So thank you. So once again, just in closing, I want to thank everyone for coming and thank you all. Thanks again to our sponsors that really make this happen. And I want to invite you back next week. So next week, we're going to have our next installment for our Leading with Justice speaking series, which we will host Dr. Daniel O'Connell and Dr. Scott Peters. So let's give Dr. Nagetta another amazing round of applause. And thank you so much for your time, the gift of time and attention that you all have given us. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. Then can I just say one last thing? If I made it sound easy, I apologize. Not easy. This is hard work, but it's the most important work we can do if we're serious about justice. So thank you, Dr. Morgan, and I wish you all the very best.
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty. Oh, yeah.
Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. 'Cause they're the ones who's coming up and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. Oh yeah,
The world won't get no better if we just let it be.